Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about somebody in the news, and I'm talking about a couple of these singers that are actually changing the economy in the areas where they give their concerts. It's pretty amazing they have this much power and pull, and most of all, the attraction that they create and talent. I want to look at these charts because I want to better understand how you can see the talent and the money and the power that they bring to the world. So today I want to talk about Beyonce. Beyonce is a fellow Texan. She's from Houston, Texas, and her chart will teach you volumes about Vedic astrology. So let's look at Beyonce, pulling her chart over here. And she has a Virgo as her rising sign. And she has a stellium of planets in Virgo in the first house. Very, very powerful. And Venus, I have to say this is the first thing that popped out of this chart to me, is that Venus sits exactly on her ascendant degree. That's incredible. Even though it is a Venus in Virgo, which is said to be debilitated, it can cause a little issues around relationships. But you know what? With all those planets in the first house, she actually has Mercury there in Virgo. Which, what does that mean? Well, first of all, Venus in Virgo, but on the ascendant degree. It sits there 26 degrees, the same degree as the ascendant, gives her beauty. Venus is beautiful. Venus is love, beauty, grace, charm. It's the planet of attraction. She's got it. She has got all of the above because she is Venusian. But it's being debilitated may bother you, but no worry with that because she has Mercury also in Virgo, which Mercury in Virgo, being next to Venus, will cancel the debilitation of Venus. Now, my theory is when you have a planet that's debilitated, it's still going to give some of its effects, and I'm sure it has in some way in relationships, but you overcome it with the exaltation of another planet next to it. An exalted Mercury in the first house is actually what we call a Bhadra Yoga, because it's a planet in its exaltation in an angle, and that gives remarkable intelligence. So not only does she have beauty, she has brains. She's smart as she can be. And with all those Virgo planets, let me tell you, she's a perfectionist. She's got to have things perfect. And she works very hard to keep things perfect. But you know, she has her own set of problems because I want to point out something else interesting in her chart. That she has what we call the Kala Sarpa Yoga, and that means when all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu. Now I know Mars is conjunct Rahu, which is another indicator of extremes in a life, and that Mars Rahu, by the way, is in her 11th house, giving her incredible gains and extremes. What Mars Rahu will do will put things over the top. Now Mars is debilitated in Cancer, but it's in the 11th house. The 11th house brings great gains. Mars does rule the 3rd house of talent, but it's magnified with Rahu. It becomes really strong with Rahu. And the dispositing planet of Mars is the moon, and it sits in the 2nd house. The 2nd house is money. Remember when you have connection between houses 2 and 11? You're gonna have the opportunity to make tons of money. So Mars being in Cancer, ruled by the moon, connects the 11th house with the 2nd house. The ruler of the 11th house, the moon, sits in the 2nd house of money. and it's in Libra, and it points back to Venus. But going back to the Kalasarpa Yoga, where all the planets are on one side of Rahu and Ketu, even when a planet is conjunct one of the nodes, in my estimation, it is still Kalasarpa. From my experience, I have seen this totally works. But what is Kalasarpa? It means you're caught in the karmas of this world. It truly does. And what it means, there is a life of extremes, of highs and lows that are unimaginable by most of us. But one thing I always tell people that have a Kalasarpa yoga is, yes, you will have extremes in life. You'll have highs, and yes, you'll have lows. But whenever you reach a low point in your life, you will rise to a higher position, much higher than before. So that always calms people down, because you always have it in the back of your mind. When you get to that low point, you're going to have another rise. Just as Beyonce, she's on a rise right now. That is remarkable, and a lot more is to come for Beyonce, because I happen to notice where all the transiting planets are headed in her chart. When Jupiter goes into Taurus, and this will be May of 2024 through May of 2025, it's going to be in her 9th house, and it's going to tip off aspecting every single planet in her 1st house. She's got one of those charts of when it rains, it pours. So sometimes when things are bad, they're really bad. Because when you get malefics aspecting that, it can be tough. But in this case, Jupiter's going to be aspecting all these planets, even though Ketu will be there as well. So Ketu and Jupiter aspecting all of these 1st house planets are going to give her even a higher rise. And that will be, Jupiter's going to aspect Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, and the ascendant. And if you want to include the outer planet, Pluto. Great power. Big changes are about to come. And her life is, she's coming to one of those peaks again. She goes from high to low to high to low. I mean, her life, it's anything but boring. It's exciting, an exciting life. And let me just say, Ketu being in her 5th house really does represent unusual talent. The 5th house is talent, and Ketu is very unusual. I want to say it's otherworldly. She has an otherworldly presence about her. Very, very, very interesting. All of those planets, so in the 1st house, give her a sense of who she is, her sense of power, and makes her extraordinarily successful. So those are just a few things I see in this chart of the power and success of somebody that has reached the level of success that is unimaginable. She's made it with her talent, her beauty, her brains, and she has a life of extremes. That's Beyonce, just glancing at her Vedic chart. So with that, I'd like to close. Remember, if you'd like to learn more about me, get a reading. If you would like to learn about my free newsletter, go to galacticcenter.org. There you can sign up for my free newsletter, get all my predictions delivered to your email address weekly, and there you're going to find about all the different things I offer, such as classes, a university, and most of all, my magazines. So go to galacticcenter.org, and if you want to study with me, if you want to be my student, you can go to my university website, which is universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.